In today's video, I'll be answering the question of which movie zombie apocalypse is the deadliest. Shaun of the Dead. Let's start with the apocalypse you'd actually want to be stuck in. Shaun of the Dead gives us zombies so slow and stupid that the main characters literally don't notice the outbreak until noon the next day. These undead stumble around like drunk uncles at a wedding, easy to avoid if you're not hungover or completely oblivious. The virus spreads through bites, sure, but the infection takes hours to fully turn someone. That's practically a lifetime in zombie terms. You've got time to say goodbye, make peace with your choices, maybe grab a pint at the Winchester. The zombies themselves can barely coordinate enough to break through a window without falling over. They're distracted by loud noises, bright lights, and apparently pub games. In the film's universe, the British military actually contains the outbreak within weeks, and society mostly recovers. They even domesticate zombies for game shows and manual labor. Shaun and his flatmate Ed literally keep one chained up in the shed for video games. If your zombie apocalypse ends with the undead stacking shelves at Tesco, you're in the best case scenario. The survival rate here is probably 60–70% if you're not a complete idiot about it. But slow zombies with a containment plan are amateur hour compared to what comes next. Night of the Living Dead. George Romero invented the modern zombie with Night of the Living Dead, and while these ghouls are slow, they introduced something terrifying: persistence. These aren't voodoo slaves or demon-possessed corpses. They're your neighbors, your family, your friends, all coming back hungry and relentless. The infection in Romero's world isn't just from bites. Every death brings you back as a zombie unless your brain is destroyed. Heart attack? Zombie. Car crash? Zombie. Die peacefully in your sleep? Congratulations, you're now a brain-eating monster. That universal infection rule means nowhere is truly safe. You could lock yourself in a bunker with supplies for years, but the moment someone dies of natural causes, you've got a zombie problem inside your safe house. The original film shows a group trapped in a farmhouse, and while the zombies are slow enough to board up windows against, their sheer numbers eventually overwhelm any defense. They learn, too. Not quickly, but they remember how to use tools. One uses a rock, another opens a car door. In later Romero films, they evolve to use guns and organize into crude societies. The franchise shows humanity surviving, but fundamentally changed. Cities become walled fortresses. The living are outnumbered by the dead. Society never truly recovers because the zombies never stop coming. Your survival odds drop to maybe 30–40%, and that's if you're lucky, armed, and don't have any elderly relatives with heart conditions. Still, at least you can outrun them. The next group won't give you that luxury: The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead took Romero's rules and dialed up the misery. These walkers are your standard slow zombies, attracted to noise and movement, killed by destroying the brain. Nothing revolutionary. But the show's apocalypse proves the zombies aren't the real threat. People are. The virus is already in everyone. When you die, you turn. Doesn't matter if a walker bit you or you tripped and cracked your skull. The infection is dormant, waiting. Bites from walkers kill through sepsis and fever within hours or days, but death itself triggers the transformation. That psychological horror keeps survivors on edge constantly. The real deadliness comes from the complete collapse of civilization. No military containment like in Shaun of the Dead. No pockets of resistance like in Romero's films. Everything falls apart globally within weeks. The show introduces factions like the Saviors, who use walkers as weapons, creating herds to attack rival groups. Survivors discover that walkers can adapt to their environment. Some learn to climb, others develop pack behavior. In flooded areas, they walk underwater. Cover yourself in walker guts, and you can move through herds undetected. But one drop of zombie blood in an open wound, and you're infected with who knows what. The Walking Dead universe is one where humanity's survival rate crashes to maybe 10–20%, and most of those survivors are probably psychopaths or cult leaders. You don't survive because you're smart or strong. You survive because you're willing to become a monster yourself. But those walkers still shuffle. What happens when the dead start running? Train to Busan. Train to Busan traps you on a speeding train with zombies that move like Olympic sprinters, having seizures. These infected are fast, aggressive, and they swarm like ants finding sugar. The South Korean outbreak spreads through bites, and the transformation is brutally quick, 10–20 seconds from infection to full zombie mode. The film shows Patient Zero attacking people in a train station, and within minutes, hundreds are infected. The zombies aren't smart, but they respond to sound with terrifying coordination. They pile onto each other, forming walls of bodies to reach their prey. In confined spaces like train cars, they're absolutely lethal. There's no fighting them off with a cricket bat. No casual stroll to the Winchester for a pint. You run or you die. The infection spreads so fast that military containment fails within hours. Martial law, quarantine zones, shoot-on-sight orders, none of it works. By the film's end, South Korea is overrun. The military bombs cities trying to contain the spread. Survivors are shot if they show any signs of infection. The human element makes it worse too. A corporate executive causes multiple deaths through selfishness. Passengers turn on each other out of fear. The zombies might be fast, but human panic is faster. Your survival odds in Train to Busan's world are maybe 5 to 10%, and that's only if you're on the right train car at the right time with the right people. Being trapped in confined spaces with sprinting zombies turns every corridor into a death trap, and you thought a fast zombie was bad. Wait until you see what happens when they're not just fast, but organized. Dead Snow, Norwegian horror comedy. Dead Snow answers the question nobody asked, which is what happens when Nazi zombies wake up from their frozen graves to reclaim stolen gold. These aren't virus zombies or radiation zombies. They're cursed undead soldiers from World War II who were buried in the mountains and stayed dormant until a bunch of medical students decided to vacation in their territory. The Nazi zombies are organized, tactical, and led by a commanding officer who retains full military discipline even in undeath. They coordinate attacks, set ambushes, and use their frozen environment to their advantage. Blizzards and avalanches become weapons. The cold preserves their bodies, making them more durable than typical zombies. And their supernatural origin means they don't follow normal rules. They can be dismembered, burned, or blown apart, but they keep coming until their curse is lifted. The infection spreads through bites, turning victims into zombies within hours. But the real danger is their intelligence. These zombies use tactics. They flank, they retreat when necessary, and they exploit weaknesses in their opponent's defenses. The sequel, Dead Snow, Dasu, escalates things by introducing zombie resurrection abilities and massive undead armies marching across the countryside. The protagonist ends up leading a Soviet zombie army against the Nazis in a conflict that's equal parts horror and absurd comedy. Military tactics in the undead. That's a problem, but tactical zombies can be outmaneuvered. The next outbreak moves too fast for strategy to matter. Military tactics in the undead. That's a problem, but tactical zombies can be outmaneuvered. The next outbreak moves too fast for strategy to matter. World War Z. The World War Z film doesn't mess around. These zombies turn people in 10 to 12 seconds flat, not minutes, seconds. One bite, and you're counting down faster than a microwave burrito. The infected move like rabid animals on crack, sprinting at full speed, leaping across gaps, and piling into human pyramids to scale walls. The film opens in Philadelphia, where traffic suddenly erupts into chaos as people start biting each other. Within hours, the city is overrun. The military can't respond fast enough. Helicopters evacuate VIPs while civilians are left to be torn apart in the streets. The infection goes global in days, not weeks or months, days. Jerusalem builds massive walls, and those zombies form a literal mountain of bodies to climb over. A 100-foot wall, and these things just stack themselves into a ramp of flesh and bone. The noise of people celebrating their false safety attracts every zombie in the region, and they pour over like a waterfall of snapping teeth. The film shows North Korea surviving by pulling everyone's teeth, which is both horrifying and probably effective. Israel's strategy fails, because humans are humans, and they make noise. The only solution discovered is a camouflage technique where healthy people infect themselves with deadly but non-fatal diseases, making zombies ignore them because they only attack healthy hosts. That's your survival strategy. Give yourself terminal cancer so zombies find you unappetizing. The global mortality rate in World War Z's movie universe is probably 90% within the first month. You survive by being on a military ship, isolated on a mountain, or lucky enough to discover the disease camouflage before you're swarmed. But at least those zombies eventually stop moving. The next outbreak includes zombies that never, ever stop. 28 days later, the rage virus doesn't create zombies in the traditional sense. The infected are alive, not undead, but calling them not zombies is like calling a nuclear bomb not a weapon, because it uses physics instead of bullets. These things are worse than zombies because they're fast, furious, and they starve. A single drop of infected blood in your eye, mouth, or cut, and you've got 10 to 20 seconds before you're a screaming, vomiting monster trying to tear apart anyone near you. The film opens with animal rights activists releasing infected chimps from a lab. Those chimps attack and infect the activists immediately. The virus spreads through London in hours. The military quarantines the country and bombs bridges to contain it, but it's too late. 28 days later, the main character wakes up in a hospital to find London completely empty. Everyone is either dead, infected, or evacuated. The infected don't eat their victims. They just attack with pure rage, spreading the virus through blood and saliva. They're not coordinated or intelligent, but they're relentless. They sprint at full speed until they catch you or their hearts give out. The good news is they starve to death after a few weeks without food. The bad news is those few weeks wipe out 99% of Great Britain's population. 28 weeks later shows the military attempting to repopulate London in a secure zone. It fails spectacularly. One asymptomatic carrier spreads the infection, and the entire safe zone falls in minutes. Firebombing civilians becomes standard protocol. The infection escapes to mainland Europe. Your survival in the 28 Days Later universe depends entirely on whether you can get to a remote island before the infected find you. The survival rate is maybe 1 to 2%, and most of those survivors are probably on oil rigs or military bases. The infected die off eventually, but by then, there's no civilization left to rebuild. At least the rage virus kills its hosts. The next apocalypse features zombies that literally cannot be killed by conventional means. Return of the Living Dead? Return of the Living Dead zombies are the nightmare scenario that keeps other zombies awake at night. These undead don't just shamble or sprint, they talk, they think, they plan, and they're completely, utterly indestructible. The outbreak starts when a military chemical called Trioxin 245 is accidentally released in a medical supply warehouse. The gas reanimates any dead tissue it contacts. Bodies in the morgue wake up screaming for brains. A corpse that's been dissected and split in half starts crawling around. Here's the terrifying part. Destroying the brain doesn't kill them. Decapitation doesn't work. You can chop one into pieces and every single piece keeps moving. In the film, characters cut a zombie in half, separate the head, and both parts are still active and hostile. The zombies talk because they retain human intelligence. One calls the police using a radio, saying, "Send more cops so fresh victims show up." They set traps. They coordinate attacks. They specifically crave brains because eating brains temporarily relieves the pain of being dead. The military's solution when these zombies outbreak is nuclear strikes. Not because nukes kill the zombies, they don't, but because incinerating everything and dispersing the ash is the only way to stop the spread. Except that doesn't work either. The nuclear blast sends trioxin into the atmosphere where it comes down as rain, reanimating every corpse in every cemetery across the region. Suddenly, you're dealing with centuries of dead bodies all waking up simultaneously. The sequels show this spreading globally through rainfall. Your survival odds in Return of the Living Dead's world are functionally zero. You can't kill them. You can't contain them. The best you can do is run to an area that hasn't had rain yet and hope you die of old age before the zombies figure out where you're hiding. And if intelligent, indestructible zombies aren't enough to terrify you, the next outbreak takes it one step further. Rexy takes place almost entirely in a Barcelona apartment building, but the infection it contains is demonic possession masquerading as a virus. The film crew follows firefighters responding to a disturbance call, and they discover a woman covered in blood attacking people. Bites turn victims within minutes into screaming, contorted monsters. The infection spreads through blood and saliva, but it's not biological. It's supernatural. The building's attic contains a possessed girl who was the subject of a failed Vatican exorcism. The demon's influence radiates through the building, turning residents into hosts. These aren't zombies operating on instinct. They're possessed by something malicious and intelligent. The infected exhibit superhuman strength, climbing walls and ceilings. They can infect animals too. A dog becomes a vector early in the film. The Spanish authorities immediately quarantine the building, welding the doors shut and refusing to let anyone out. No evacuation. No rescue. The military's policy is containment through extermination. The found footage style shows the infection spreading floor by floor as characters desperately try to escape. The attic sequence reveals the possessed girl using echolocation to hunt in complete darkness, moving with insect-like precision. She's not a mindless zombie. She's a predator using intelligence and demonic powers. The sequels expand the outbreak to other locations, but always with the same pattern. Demonic infection creating possessed humans who spread like a virus. Your survival in REC's universe depends on whether you're near one of these outbreaks when they start. If you are, you're dead. If you're not, you might survive if religious authorities can contain it. But the film suggests these possessions are increasing, implying the demon is winning. Survival rate is hard to calculate because the infection seems localized but unstoppable within those locations. Maybe 70–80% of humanity survives because most people aren't in Barcelona that weekend, but everyone in that building has a 0% survival rate. Now here's where it gets interesting. What if the zombies weren't just possessed or infected, but fundamentally transformed into something new? Resident Evil. The Resident Evil films take the T-virus from the games and weaponize it into a global extinction event. The virus is engineered by the Umbrella Corporation as a bioweapon meant to create controllable soldiers. Instead, it creates an endless variety of mutated horrors that nearly end all life on Earth. Standard T-virus zombies are your baseline undead, slow, stupid, killed by headshots. But the virus mutates constantly. Lickers emerge, skinless monsters with exposed brains, elongated tongues, and the ability to climb walls and ceilings. Cerberus dogs hunt in packs with exposed muscle tissue and enhanced speed. Tyrants are 9-foot-tall bioweapons with massive claws and regenerative abilities. The Nemesis is a sentient super soldier that tracks specific targets relentlessly, using guns and tactics. The movies show the virus spreading from a contained outbreak in the Hive, an underground research facility, to the entire surface world within weeks. Umbrella tries to contain it with nukes. That doesn't work. The virus adapts. Raccoon City gets nuked and the fallout just spreads the infection further. By the second film, North America is a wasteland. By the third, the world is a desert. Umbrella's solution is to put the wealthy elite in cryosleep underground while the surface becomes overrun. The virus continues evolving topside, creating new mutations that adapt to different environments. The films show underwater zombies, flying mutations, and eventually psychic-controlled super zombies. Alice, the protagonist, discovers Umbrella created thousands of facility clones worldwide, each one potentially releasing more virus strains. Your survival in Resident Evil's movie world is maybe 5% at best, and that's only if you're part of Umbrella's protected elite or extremely lucky. The virus doesn't just kill, it evolves. Every time humanity adapts, the T-virus mutates into something worse. You're not fighting an outbreak, you're fighting biological warfare that learns. But viruses can be cured, mutations can be countered. What happens when the infection is fungal and environmental? The Last of Us. The Last of Us gives us a fungal apocalypse where the infection doesn't just kill you, it transforms you through stages, each one more horrifying than the last. The cordyceps fungus mutates to infect humans, spreading through bites or airborne spores in enclosed spaces. Stage 1 is runners, freshly infected people who still look human but act with animalistic aggression. They sprint, they swarm, and they bite. You've got maybe 2 days before you become one. Stage 2 is stalkers. The fungus grows through the host's brain, making them hide and ambush prey. They're smart enough to flank and coordinate basic attacks. Stage 3 is clickers. The fungus erupts through the skull, blinding the host but giving them echolocation. They navigate by clicking sounds, and their skulls are armored plates that stop bullets. They're nearly impossible to kill quietly. Stage 4 is bloaters. Massive, tank-like infected covered in fungal armor that can rip a human apart and throw clouds of acidic spores. The show adds Stage 5, shamblers in wet environments that spray acid. And the final form is the Rat King, a fusion of multiple infected that got trapped together for years, creating a multi-body monstrosity with incredible strength. The infection goes global within months, not years. Months. Spores make entire buildings uninhabitable. You need a gas mask just to enter certain areas, and if that mask breaks, you're infected immediately. There's no cure. The military bombs cities, quarantine zones, or brutal fascist states where infected are executed on site. The show reveals that the fungus creates underground networks, allowing infected to communicate across distances. When one group of infected is disturbed, others know. Your survival in the Last of Us world is around 10–15%, and most survivors live in military quarantine zones that are only marginally better than death. You're not fighting just infected. You're fighting an environment that wants to kill you. Cultish factions, resource scarcity, and the slow realization that humanity is losing territory every year. And if a fungal plague that evolves through stages sounds bad, imagine if it lasted 28 years and counting.
Boom, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war.
28 years later. 28 years later takes the rage virus and extends it into a generational apocalypse. The film is set decades after the initial outbreak, and while most infected have starved, the virus persists through asymptomatic carriers. These carriers appear completely normal, but their blood and bodily fluids are contagious. The British mainland is a wasteland. Survivors live on isolated islands or fortified settlements. The film follows a group discovering that some infected have survived for years, implying mutations or adaptations that allow them to feed on wildlife or each other. That's apocalypse-level horrifying. If infected can reproduce, the outbreak never ends. The virus becomes a permanent part of Earth's ecosystem. Humanity's repopulation efforts fail repeatedly because carriers keep spreading the infection unknowingly. One carrier enters a settlement, and within hours, everyone is infected. The military response has evolved to shoot first and test for infection later. Entire communities are wiped out on suspicion. Trust is impossible. The film's trailers show evolved infected that are faster and more coordinated than before, suggesting the virus is adapting to make better killers. Your survival after 28 years of this outbreak is less than 1%. Most survivors are on remote islands with strict quarantine protocols. Mainland Britain is a lost cause. Europe is falling. The virus is spreading through carriers who don't even know they're infected. You're not surviving this apocalypse. You're just delaying the inevitable. Still, the rage virus eventually kills its host. The next infection turns living people into sadistic monsters who never die from the disease. The Sadness and Crossed. The Sadness is a Taiwanese film where a virus doesn't turn people into mindless zombies. It removes their inhibitions and turns them into sadistic psychopaths. The infected, called crazies, are fully conscious. They know what they're doing. They just don't care anymore. They rape, they torture, they kill in the most creatively horrific ways possible because the virus makes cruelty feel good. The film opens with a couple separating for the day. Within hours, the city descends into chaos as people start attacking each other with knives, cars, improvised weapons, anything they can grab. The infected laugh while they kill. They taunt their victims. They're not driven by hunger or rage. They're driven by sadism. A businessman in a coffee shop suddenly stabs a waitress repeatedly, smiling the entire time. A woman on a train carriage infects everyone around her by biting them, then watches as they turn and attack each other. The scariest part is the infected don't die. They're alive. They feel pain, they bleed, but the virus doesn't kill them. They just keep going until someone stops them. This is nearly identical to Crossed from the comics, where infected develop a cross-shaped rash and become hyper-violent psychopaths. Crossed retain all their intelligence. They use guns, set traps, and coordinate attacks. But they also engage in the most depraved acts imaginable just because they can. The infection spreads through fluids in seconds. One drop of spit in your eye and you're crossed within a minute. The comics show global collapse within days. No military containment, no safe zones. Humanity survives in small groups that constantly run and hide. Survival rate in the Sadness or Crossed universe is maybe 0.5%. You're not fighting zombies. You're fighting intelligent humans who want to torture you to death while laughing. There's no cure. There's no adaptation. You just run forever. And if intelligent sadists sound like the worst possible zombie apocalypse, let me introduce you to something even deadlier. I Am Legend. I Am Legend gives us Darkseekers, vampiric mutants, created by a cancer cure gone wrong. These aren't traditional zombies. They're evolved predators with intelligence, pack tactics, and superhuman physical abilities. The virus spreads through contact and turns people within days. The Darkseekers are sensitive to UV light, forcing them underground during the day. But at night, they hunt. They set traps. The Alpha Darkseeker in the film captures a dog using a snare copied from one that the protagonist used. That's tool use. That's learning. These creatures are faster and stronger than humans. They can smell blood from a mile away. They hunt in coordinated packs with alphas commanding lesser Darkseekers. The protagonist, Robert Neville, survives alone in New York City for 3 years by staying inside fortified buildings during the night and scavenging during the day. But the Darkseekers are learning his patterns. They follow him. They test his defenses. The movie shows entire hives of hundreds of Darkseekers sleeping in dark buildings, waiting for night. When they attack, they swarm like army ants. The virus killed 90% of humanity immediately. Another 9% turned into Darkseekers. The remaining 1% are immune survivors hiding in bunkers or remote locations. The film's alternate ending reveals the Darkseekers are developing a society. They have families. They mourn their dead. You're not fighting mindless monsters. You're fighting a new species that's replacing humanity. Your survival rate is functionally 0 unless you're immune and find a colony of other immune survivors. Even then, you're living in a world where the dominant species hunts you for sport. But even Darkseekers have weaknesses. What if the zombies had none? So which zombie apocalypse is the deadliest? If we're measuring by global mortality, speed of collapse, and chances of human survival, the answer comes down to 3 factors: infection speed, zombie capabilities, and environmental persistence. Return of the Living Dead zombies are indestructible and intelligent, but they require specific chemical exposure to spread. The Sadness and Crossed turn people into intelligent psychopaths in seconds, and they're functionally unstoppable because they're alive and coordinated. But the deadliest? That title goes to 28 Days Later and its sequel, 28 Years Later. Here's why. The Rage virus combines the worst elements of every other outbreak. It turns people in seconds like World War Z. The infected are fast and relentless like Train to Busan. They spread through minimal fluid contact like the Sadness. And most critically, the virus persists through asymptomatic carriers who can restart the outbreak decades later. You can't cure it. You can't wait it out. You can't hide from it. The infected eventually starve, but before they do, they destroy civilization. And then carriers restart everything. It's a zombie apocalypse on a loop. Society rebuilds. Carriers spread infection. Collapse happens again. 28 years later and humanity is still losing. The survival rate is statistically 0. Your best case scenario is living on a remote island with strict quarantine and hoping no carrier ever reaches you. That's not survival. That's delayed extinction. Every other zombie apocalypse eventually reaches equilibrium. Humanity adapts, or the zombies die off, or containment succeeds. The Rage virus never reaches equilibrium. It just keeps going, generation after generation, until there's no one left to infect. That persistence makes it the deadliest movie zombie apocalypse ever created. You don't survive the Rage virus. Nobody does. You just decide how long you want to run before it catches you. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every real way that could cause a zombie apocalypse, click the video on the screen.